So I wanted to talk about something that is really important to me and something I'm passionate about, something pretty much like the essence of, I won't say the essence of my life because that's a very like heavy assertion, but a core aspect of who I am as a person and what I want to do career-wise, what I want to do, what my legacy is multidimensional thinking, finding some unities in the dichotomies that we have, and bridging that gap in the spectrums. So, first off, I'll start off saying that pretty much everything in life is not black or white. There is a billion shades of gray, and that comes in every category. There is a billion kinds of people. There is a billion kinds of love. There is a billion kinds of jobs. There is a billion kinds of personality nuances that you can have. And what I want to do specifically right now is talk about the interaction of logic and feeling. Because on one side, you have feeling, which is this, it just knowing inside you, this sensation, this inkling that something is happening. But you don't really have any external proof, it's completely internal. So that's one side. Then you have logic, which is strictly perceptual, strictly sensational, and strictly objective and measurable. So you have logic that says, logic doesn't just guess something. Logic says, I think it's going to be this, but I'm not going to act until I know. And I'm going to observe it in a methodical way to the best of my abilities so that I don't make a fool of myself. And, we see the people who are more logic driven and the people who are more feeling driven. Other way around. Logic, feeling driven. And you see those interactions and how they stratify themselves into, for the most part, for a large majority of people, into different career fields. If you're a feeler, you might be a musician, an artist, a social worker, or somebody who works with people, or maybe you're too sensitive and you don't want to work with people, you want to be like a writer, or something along the lines of feeling your way out through the world, allowing your sort of trying to have a logical, I'll say logical because it's not really logical, but it kind of is logical, but exploring and hypothesizing and allowing your feelings to take hold and letting that pull you. Versus the logical people who are, statisticians, mathematics, science people, all these people who want these objective, concrete certainties. They don't want to be ignorant, but like I said, there is a myriad of possibilities in between. Like I said, if you're a feeler, sorry, it's hard for me to do my hands because usually I'm talking with my left hand about feelers, but since you're looking from a different point of view, I'm talking with my right hand. But a feeler is going to be somebody who, on one side, at this midpoint in the spectrum of feeling, they might be a teacher or somebody who works with people. And this is like, how your mom just knows what you've been up to, or how somebody will just text you out of the blue and you're not even in the same state as them. They don't know anything about you. They haven't talked to you for a while, but they just like, I felt like you needed me. And like, these are the feelers. It's super awesome, super cool. I'm very sensitive. I'm very feeling oriented as my natural predilection of who I am. I've become more logically oriented, and I'll explain that to you for a reason. Well, not more logically, but I have sort of tried to shift who I am for the sake of understanding and bridging the spectrum between us and allowing it to take us somewhere new. But then the logically oriented people, those are like the methodical people who they have like, it seems like a sense of intuition, but it's not. It's mostly just looking at you and looking at how you behave and creating algorithms for that behavior. And feeling kind of encapsulates this as well, but there is another aspect to feeling that we don't quite, that cannot be labeled under that, because like I said, with the state thing, where it's like someone's far away or they should not know, there's no logical way for them to know what you're doing, yet they know something about you. They didn't look at you and put two and two together because they're not even in front of you, but they knew that you needed them or something about you without having any type of logic, seemingly, because it's spectrum. Anyway, on the logical side, they are looking at you, observing. They're like, every morning she wakes up and does her yoga, drinks her coffee at like 6 in the morning. She's a morning person. Then, they combine that with other tidbits of information. Every night she goes to bed and she's really, really cranky. So they might buy you a gift or give you a gift late at night to offset that crankiness. And you're like, oh my God, how did you know that I needed this? And it's like, well, in their mind, they're like, because you do this every night, or, you are always whiny after this. And that's how they see it, and they observe it, and it's a pattern for them. So they act on it. But like to the feeler, they're just like, oh my God, like, how did you know that? And it's like, well, they logically came to this conclusion. And the point of this is, throughout history, we have reverberated. And typically, with a lot of reverberations, it goes from one side to the other, because that's how we think right now, is this is right or wrong. It is a very low level of Kohlberg's moral assessment. The good girl, good boy, law and order. It's nothing above law and order, because it's either this or this type thing. So it's either in society, like, in the 1000s, like 1066, a little bit before that, it was very feeling oriented. And like the Renaissance and that whole time was actually trying to go back to a logical time, but what was happening in the mainstream, in like the church, was a total feeling oriented. They looked at you and said, you do this, you're a witch, without having any logical conclusions, without having any methodical approaches, or any type of confirmation, validation assessments. They went and said, you are this, or you are because we say so, because of some arbitrary inkling. I just feel like you are. You have your cross is upside down in your house. You're a witch. You know what I mean? And even the validation sets that they had were very, very stupid, and that went on for hundreds and hundreds of years. And then you have the Industrial Revolution, where it was just like straight science. This is like the 1800s to the 20th century, and people don't know this, and they think that religion has dominated thinking, but it really has not. There is times when heavy science has. And the Enlightenment period to up till about like the 1950s is where that dominated. And like, yes, you had organized religion, and it was still like this main force of like just serve God, and like you had people serving into these paradigms, but societally we're very logically driven. Behaviorism, the scientific method, was birthed out of this period of time. The scientific method was earlier, but it's the 18th century is when it really took hold. And it's important to understand this, because it's important to understand what we do and what we're going to have to do. And I would say that logic has been winning more and more and more lately. An interesting story is B.F. Skinner, the man majorly responsible for behaviorism, and which is one of the most commonly used therapies. DBT and CBT interact with this ideology in a more friendly way, because this man did not believe in anything you couldn't see, and this is how a lot of the psychologists were at the time. Not Freud, but they were just like, if you can't see it, if it can't be measured, it's not real. So things like the conscious, things like the emotions, things like, well, those are the two big ones. I'm not going to stretch my mind trying to think of this right now, especially when I'm trying to talk to you. But anyway, they're not real. So operant conditioning, which is basically just rewarding or punishing behaviors, was very popular and is very effective. You can shape behaviors by associating things to them, by rewarding them, or by punishing them. And it's super effective, but it messed things up a lot. Like, literally every one of his children, like, either killed themselves or had a miserable, drug-riddled, terrible life, because he was giving it, like, he was just basically like, there's no bond, there's no spirituality, there's no anything that connects you. Emotions aren't even real. Emotions are made based on just associating pleasure and pain with things. And it's kind of messed up. But he was basically saying things like, you don't even have to touch your kid, you don't even have to hold them. And our grandparents and parents, the people who grew up in America in the 1920s and in Europe, because this is also, one of the main pots for individualistic thinking, grew up under this paradigm of, you were being rewarded for this, good, you were being punished for this, and their brain is literally wired to these very dichotomous ways. And why I'm saying this is because it is a major source of using logic, using what's observable to dictate society. And it's a great thing because, like I said, it's prevented people. A lot of wars have been a result of just people being in their feelings. People assuming something and not methodically observing. People, hundreds of thousands of people died in the Inquisition because of just superstition. And, that's not right, just to be feeling oriented completely and just be like, I feel like you're this, so you are. And, but on the other side, it's like, well, there is no feeling. And right now in society, we have, on a scientific level, we understand the quantum world like never before, which is, what are the constructs, what are the lower dimensions, and how do they bring forth reality. And, how I grew up was just like, it's all atoms. And then, kind of in the midpoint of me growing up, there was quarks and bosons, but it's still like this particle, and it's this certainty thing. And it's just this dot. And now it's like, well, it's a wave, but sometimes it's not a wave, and things can change and flip, and we don't know exactly where it's at, and maybe it exists, maybe it doesn't exist. And things are, more luminous fibers rather than particles, and they can change shapes and they can change locations and characteristics, and literally the certainty that logic held on to so dearly and wants so bad is not there. And I really think that logic is going to get hit its head against the wall, because logic is structural and feelings are physiological. It's all just one thing: evidence. Evidence. It's all just evidence. Logic is external evidence. Feelings are internal evidence. Gathering things in here. What's your, it wouldn't be a sensation, but I guess an internal sensation is an okay way to describe it. Or an external perception, and how that dictates your evidence. It's all just evidence. But I think that logic is going to hit its head against the wall, because the structure is there, but how is it working? And that's the next question that we have to answer. Not what is happening, what is this made of, what are we made of, but how. And people in like logic is trying to answer the how, but it really can't because it's using strictly a paradigm of structure. That would be that it's akin to saying something like, and this is an example of intercorollary knowledge, which is something really cool you should look up. It's akin to saying, okay, I have this human, she's 5'2", 120-ish pounds, and, brown hair, likes to wear hats, this is her hand shape, how she functions, moving this or that, these are the typical behaviors that she does. That doesn't describe me as a person. And you wouldn't be able, if you knew all these things about me, you really wouldn't be able to know me. You wouldn't really be able to, you could know how you could reward and punish me and shape my behavior based on what you know as a general whole about psychology, but me as a person, you wouldn't really be able to know. And without these higher lower order things of meaning and feeling and having an inclination that there's something more there, without having that relationship aspect, logic is going to hit its head against the wall. Because it's just like, well, we know it's there, and it's just like you're looking at it. You're looking at the water, but you're not diving into it. You're not swimming in it. You're not being encompassed by it. You know it, but you're not understanding it because you're merely looking at it. And I think a way we need to do these things is find some type of bridge to say we are logically going to study feelings, or we're going to include feelings and personal bias, because you can't really eliminate that, and observer bias into our studies. There's like, for instance, physicist, the Schrodinger experiment, where is the cat in the box alive or dead? There's a reality where it is, there's a reality where it isn't. How an electron does not exist until you observe it. It's not going to, well, that's an overgeneralization, but like if you're not looking for it, it won't stop into a position. It's going to keep going as a wave. It won't ever be a particle for you. And that's a good example because it's just like, if you are a physicist who has this schema of expecting these things, and you have an intention of what you want things to be, but you have an expectation as well based on the mental schemes and the images and the information currently running your algorithm, what's to say that's not why we have the results we have? That if you took a child who knows nothing, or maybe an artsy-fartsy person who's like, the world is run on elves and magic, what if they had a different conclusion because they don't have the scaffolding that the scientifically based person does? And even so, what if it changes or skews the results in a significant way? And I think we need to logically assess these things so we don't get lost in the muck and say things like, oh, like a lot of the new agey stuff is just like, oh, get a crystal, or just like imagine this light, and it's not very standardized, and it's not very helpful. It can be helpful, and it can be immensely helpful actually if you know how to conceptualize these things. You have these paradigms, but for the logically oriented person, it's like the placebo effect is completely shot out the door for them, which is a major factor in healing your expectations and your intentions. We know that even depression medications have been shown to have very little efficacy. If you expect to be better, they have and you get a placebo, you get better a lot of times. Like there is a very low significance in the actually taking the depression medication versus taking a placebo. No medication, yeah, you're not doing anything. Nothing's gonna get better. But if you have a placebo, it's kind of like, well, a depression medication is not much better than the placebo, and that's something that's real. And the point of this all is to, like I said, bridge this gap and delve into emotions and sensation and delve into that darkness in a logical, ordered sense so you don't get lost. Because the darkness, you can't see anything. But as we know with logic, if you're staying merely in the sunlight, well, you know everything that's there. You're not going to ever find anything new. You have to take some light into the darkness and come bring something out. It's how it works. It's just how it works. If you, let's say for instance, I look around this whole apartment and I can't find my phone, it's off, whatever, can't call it, can't find it, but I just keep looking around in the light, and someone's like, well, why don't you go outside? I'm like, well, it's dark outside. And it's like, well, you already looked everywhere in here, it's not in here. And I'm saying this because I truly think this is what the future holds, and what we need to do is have unification of these things in order for our children to have, in order for our society to evolve and grow. And a big aspect of this is accepting the multidimensionality, the non-linearity of things. That sometimes you're here, sometimes you're here, you're reverberating back and forth, but you're also ascending. Because logic did not used to be so encapsulated. Like now we can study things, and we are seeing like these amazing studies of the human biosphere and of the energy fields and things that you can't necessarily observe. We're having studies into consciousness because our logic has evolved by incorporating emotions. And I really just want to promote this and to share this with you because it's the future. And before, logic was feels good, do it, or this is how people are. They don't have consciousness. They just need a feel good or pain, and they will not do something, or they will do something for you. And whereas now we know, like, they might, but eventually they'll probably wimp out because there's no meaning in their life, no purpose, no higher order function, and it completely depletes their will to live, to be treated as this perfectly machine-like structure. We're not just a machine. And we needed to accept the unknown before we could evolve our logic to the point where it's at today. And you need these highly creative and highly feeling-oriented people to be able to thrive in a logical setting as well. So yeah, thank you for watching. Love you. Bye.